What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to navigate Blender. A good friend of mine watched my videos and he was like, your videos are like really good. I love what you show us how to like go through and do these simple tricks in Blender. But he's like, what if you go watch my videos and you really have never opened up a 3D program before and you don't know what you're looking at? And I was like, you know what? Good point. So I'm going to show you guys how to open up Blender for the first time and basically not be scared to try and start to make something. A good professor of mine once said that all programs are basically the same. And of course, there are minor and sometimes big differences, but basically what he meant to say was, if you know what you're looking for, the tool you are looking for, you will be able to find it no matter what program you are in. And I like, once he said that, it just clicked in my head. I was like, that makes so much sense. You open up all these different programs and sometimes you get scared because you're like, it's new, I've never used it before, it's meant for different purposes. But in reality, each program sort of has the same commands almost. And as long as you know what command you're looking for and what you're trying to do, you'll be able to find it. So today we're going to start off from the top. And we're going to sort of like go over here and work our way back around. And hopefully this will like help you just understand Blender a little bit more, especially if you've never opened up a 3D program. I know when you open one up for the first time, it's pretty darn scary. At least that's how I felt when I opened up one for the first time. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like way out of my league. I was used to just like 2D programs, like Illustrator, Photoshop. I opened up a 3D program and I was like, I'm not gonna make it. But it's way easier than you think, guys. And hopefully this video will help you, get a jump start on that. So like I said, let's pretend you've opened up Blender for the first time. This is the screen you're going to see right here. It's going to ask you what new file you'd like to create. Would you like to focus on a 2D animation, a sculpting, VX, video editing? These are all the components that Blender can help you use to create these things. But basically, because Blender is a wide program, it has so many different capabilities. But the point of these options here is that if you were to click 2D animation, it'll change this screen in the background to focus on what you would need for the 2D animation. This background right now is set up for 3D. Obviously, if you're working on 2D animation, it's going to give you a few different things. It's going to give you something where you'll be able to, sketch on and focus a bit more on those 2D aspects. And then basically just help you zone in on what you're trying to work on. But for the most part, you're going to come over here and click general because, coming into Blender for the most time, you're going to jump around and do a lot of things. So clicking on general is your best bet. So we're going to do that. So you clicked on general and now you see this default cube that is always here. I don't know why they give us a default cube, but like I said, this is what you always start off with. You start off with your default cube. This is your camera, which is, this is the space that we're working in, all of this. But when it comes time to, let's say, taking a picture of what you've created, you want to look through your camera. And then this is a light for us to just be able to see. Well, we'll actually get into that later because the light gets complicated. So like I said, default cube, we're not going to do anything with it really. So if you wanted to delete it, you can actually just delete it. So that's the first step right there. You get rid of the default cube. Shift A is your best friend. Like in Minecraft, to go into your toolbox, like this is what this reminds me of. Shift A lets you come into these categories over here of what we can add onto the screen. So we can technically add another cube. We're not going to. You can Shift A, you can bring in a UV sphere. You want to start off with something circular, maybe manipulate it later. So yeah, like I said, Shift A is really like your toolbox. We have mesh. Mesh, in other words, is objects. So you have a cube, UV sphere, and all this other stuff. And there's plenty of add-ons that you can get more things. You can even add a monkey. See? Just like that. And that's a nice basis to start off your project with. If you don't know where you're heading, you grab one of these basic shapes and you build it into something later. There's curves. There's all these other things. There's lights. We want we want an area light, a spotlight. You get into that stuff later once you start building upon things. So Shift A is definitely your best friend. Remember that. And there's always there's a website. You just Google it. You Google Blender hotkeys and it'll tell you all these shortcuts in order to get to these, categories, these option menus. But let's start at the top. File. Pretty simple. Like any other program. This is where you can come into import or to save things. You go into edit. And this is where you can come into your preferences. Preferences is pretty cool because Blender has a bunch of add-ons, and a lot of the add-ons are for free. So there are plenty of add-ons where, let's say, I don't know, you wanted to make a tree. They even have like add-ons to help you. They have trees already made or just anything like that. So the add-on category it's huge. There's a lot you can do with it. Blender is actually pretty darn incredible. Render means exactly what it means. Render means you want to basically take a snapshot. You want to take a picture of what you've created. You want to make that final render, the final image. You can even render the animation that you work on. So you could come over to this tab and click those. Window, obviously. Break up another window and we have our help menu. Our layout is where you're always going to come over. So you know what? Let's just actually bring in something that, you know, we can keep looking at for reference. Don't mind this. I'm just going to drag it up. So in our layout, this is like, you know, your main screen where we started off, where we could come in and view everything. Modeling. So let's say you click this. You want to work on this cube. Now it's giving you a bunch of options over here where you can specifically model it. Not that you couldn't model it in layout, technically. Layout is very limited. You can technically, you know, stretch it like that or like this. But in order to really do something to it, to do bevels, to do extrusions, you know, you would come into this and that's how you would manipulate it further than if you were just in the layout menu. And there's plenty of things you can do in modeling, which, you know, there's plenty of videos to go on to decide what it is you're exactly trying to do, and they'll show you how to use all of this. But this is just the basics to not be scared of these menu options and what you're trying to first achieve in Blender. You just want to understand it first. There's a sculpting tab. Sculpting's really cool. It's a lot like the ZBrush tabs. If anybody's ever used ZBrush, or you've just seen the videos in ZBrush. Our next one is UV editing. You know, you'll get into this later, but don't worry about this tab too much. Texture paint and everything, that's pretty advanced. It's just to, like you said, to paint textures onto your object. Shading is where you'll be coming a lot of the time as well. You go into the shading tab, and basically this looks very scary, but you don't even really need to come into this tab in the beginning when you don't really know what you're doing. You can stay within the layout menu. All shading means is, we're jumping around a little bit, but you see these 4 circular icons up here. The one that we're on says viewport shading, which right now it defaults to nothing. But had we wanted to make our cube blue, we technically made its base color blue, but you don't see anything. That's because right now we're in viewport shading, but what you want to do is go to material. Oops, sorry. So I said it was viewport shading. What I meant to say we're in solid mode, but what you want to do is you want to go to material preview. We want to see the material we just made. That's how you see the material you just made. Now it's blue. Very simple. And that's basically all of these options right here on the side for its material. That's what this is. You can see it within the shading tab. See? Now it's blue. We have an animation to work on the frames down here. That's our camera's view. I haven't moved the camera yet. That's why it's like doesn't even look good, but that's where you come. You could go to rendering. Once you've rendered an image, it'll be here. You can continue to mess with it. You can go to compositing, same thing. Make the image look even better. Nodes and scripting, honestly, don't even go to those. I personally don't even go to those. Maybe you will, but I don't really use those. This is where you'll see the scene that you are working on over here. This is your scene collection. If you ever done in Photoshop, this is basically your layers. So let's go back to layout. So in my scene, all I have is my camera, my cube, my light. That's all we got in the scene right now. But if I was to add a UV sphere, and I'm just going to move it to the side, now my sphere is also in my scene. So these are all your layers that you'll be working on, or the objects that are within your scene. So let's come down, and when you don't have anything selected, it's pretty basic. You don't really need to move anything over here. This is your render properties where you can turn on ambient occlusion, bloom. If you had lights, you know, bloom makes everything like glow. You can have screen space reflections, but that's what all these options mean. You want to come down into your output properties. So let's say you always press 0 to look through your camera. And let's say I wanted my camera to be, let's say you're making something for Instagram. You want it to be 10 by 80. You would just come in and change it. And it changes the view. Now it's a 10 by 80. It's as simple as that. But I'm going to actually just leave it at 19 by 20. So that's, you press 0 to come in and out of the camera view. That's it. That's simple. And that's what this output is all about. And of course, you can change where, if you had an animation, you could click on this folder right here and change where you want it to go out once you render it. Because once you render an animation, it automatically saves into the folder that you've told it to go to. Down below that, we have our layer properties, which I honestly don't even mess with too much. You have your scene, which I don't come into too much either. You have your world settings, which is cool because back up to over here where we had the material preview, the last circular icon is actually the display render preview, which is exactly what it looks like. This is exactly what the image will look like depending on the lights you have, the textures you have. Your last icon is exactly what it will look like when you go to render it. So, you know, let's take away the light, all of a sudden, can't see anything, you know, it's dark. And let's just say in our world settings, you didn't want like anything gray. Let's say you wanted it to be like you wanted it to be black. Well, now you can't see your cube at all, but all you really could do is just Shift A, pop in a light, scale it up a little bit, and then within my lights settings, I'm just gonna hit it up with 1000. Boom, now we can see our cube again. And I'm actually just, if you click this little arrow over here, and you go to view, click on camera to view, now you can use your mouse to move your camera around. And let's just say you don't want your mouse to move your camera around anymore, simply click it off. So back, like I said, these are your world settings, which, you know, you can make them dark, you can make it extremely bright, which is a really cool, easy way to give it a little mood. You can even do this, you know, change the color of the background without even adding a background yet. Because let's say you do add a background. Shift A, we're going to bring in a plane. We're going to size that up. So let's just say this was the background. Move that right there. And let's say I want my plane to be, I don't know. Let's go yellow. I want my plane to be yellow. This just adds different warm tones in your world settings of your scene, even more than if you were to actually. So let's change this. Let's bring it down a little bit. Let's say I wanted to go for like this really cool look. And let's say you want to just change your light as well. Say you don't want a white light. That's fine. In your area light, all you're going to do is come to your light settings, which is this little light bulb down here. Once you have your light selected, all you can do is just change the color. I want it to be blue. I want it to be very cool. There you go. But with the blue in the background, it just adds upon everything. And you know, now you can change the background. Say I want to make it warm. It just adjusts everything even more, which is really cool. So let's go down. This is your collection properties. Don't really mess with that. This is your transform, which is just simply, it's the same thing as if you were to come over here, select your object, and just simply move it yourself. Which we're gonna get to these at the end. Or maybe I should just get to it now. These properties over here are your move, your rotate, your scale, your transform. Basic operations that you'll need to use over and over and over again. Move, you move. Rotate, drag on this little blue line, you rotate it that way, or you can rotate it this way, you know? Pretty self-explanatory. You want to scale? You can scale it up. You can scale it this way. You know, these are your basic, like, but like I said, once you want to do more, you kind of have to go into, you know, you gotta go into the modeling if you want to really, like, manipulate it, or maybe you'll go into sculpting to really sculpt upon your cube. Let's go down into our modifier properties. Modifiers are exactly what they sound like. You can modify your object. You know, you'll find more videos on that. Below that, we have our particle properties. We work on that later. Particle systems, I have videos on that. Make sure you go check those out. You have your physics properties, your object constraints, and what your main thing you're going to come to is your material properties. Like we said earlier, material, you want to change the color. Let's make it like this pink color now. And as you see, it's kind of like, it's got this like, it's not metallic or anything, but if you go down, remember, we're in our material tabs. You can change the color. You can also change the metallic. Say, I want it to be metallic. I boost the metallic up. Your roughness, you bring that down. And now it's more of a metallic object. Other than that, you won't even use half of these other things, to be completely honest with you. You mostly use base color, subsurface, your subsurface color, metallic, and roughness. You honestly rarely ever use these other things. They're here for you to work upon, but most people don't even use them. That's one of the like really cool things. And then the last thing we have is our texture properties. We're done with this side, guys. We're almost there. You move down here. This is your timeline. Animators, we know what this is all about. This is to see our frames. Each number is a different frame. How do you move anything in the scene? This is where you would come down to see it and continue messing with it. And you would make it play and it would go across. Finally, we showed up over here. I told you what these are all about. These are your basic movements. Let's get out of our camera view. And we're basically almost even done. We're going to come up to our object mode. Object mode is exactly what it sounds like. We're looking at our object. You know, we're just moving it across. Simple. But if you wanted to continue to manipulate your object, you go into edit mode. Edit mode is my favorite. This is where you really get to make things happen. You extrude them, bring it down, you know, go left, right. This is where you actually manipulate and start creating things and modeling things and building things out. That's in edit mode. But you always need to go back into object mode. You cannot stay in edit mode. You have to always go back into object mode after you're done manipulating it. And so you're going to jump back between object mode and edit mode. And that's pretty much it. This is where you come to your view, you select your add object. That's it, guys. This is your proportional editing, which I also have a video on when I make things melt. But that is Blender. It's nothing to be scared about. It's honestly, like, those are the basics you need to know to start creating cool things. Like, don't be scared to even just start. Come here, set up your cube, set up a plane beneath it, move the plane around and stuff, and just try to render out an image. And then it's really that simple. Like, honestly, I think my favorite thing when I first started was learning about the material properties, because it just, like, you go from, and remember, that's because I'm in my rendered layer over here that I'm seeing this, but back into solid mode when everything is gray, you know, it looks cool, you know, you're like, I'm building something, but it just makes it so much cooler when you actually start to see the colors and the lights come together. You're like, I'm actually doing it, you know, I'm making something in a 3D program. That's all it takes to start and go open up Blender and just, you know, really throw yourself into the world of 3D. It's a huge world, but it is such a cool one, and it's a one where artists are heading into more and more every day. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You know, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video to your friends, get them into Blender. That's basically it. I will see you guys next time. Have a good day.